War of Conquest. The War of Conquest, also called the Targaryen Conquest, was a major war initiated by Aegon Targaryen to conquer the continent of Westeros. Supported by his sister wives, Rhaenys and Visenya, and their dragons, Meraxes and Vhagar, as well as his own, Balerion, Aegon successfully unified 6 of the 7 kingdoms of Westeros under the invading forces of House Targaryen within 2 years. Only Dorne was able to successfully resist Aegon's conquest. Despite its name, the conflict was not entirely resolved on the field of battle, as some regions and houses of Westeros actively supported the Targaryen war effort, while others voluntarily surrendered to their might. Upon the conclusion of his conquest, Aegon was crowned by the High Septon as the first king of the Undulls, the Rhoynar, and the First Men, establishing the ruling Targaryen dynasty of the 7 kingdoms for the next 3 centuries. Aegon's coronation date subsequently became the basis for the Westerosi calendar, with maesters tracking years from before and after Aegon's ascension to the throne. The Targaryen family had moved from Valyria to the island stronghold of Dragonstone some years prior to the Doom. When the Doom took place, the Targaryens were the only family with dragons to survive the cataclysm. During the following century, the remnants of the Valyrian Empire tore themselves apart, leading to the formation of the Free Cities and the liberation of Giscard and the cities of Slavers Bay. Roughly 1 century after the Doom, Aegon Targaryen and his sister wives, Rhaenys and Visenya, were in the island of Dragonstone. Before Aegon invaded Westeros, the Storm King Argilac of House Durrandon feared that Harren the Black of House Hoare, the ruler of the Iron Islands and Riverlands, would soon attack his lands. Argilac sought an alliance with Aegon, but the communication didn't go well, ending up with Argilac, known as the Arrogant, amputating Aegon's envoy. This was the excuse that Aegon had been waiting to use his armies and force on Westeros. He sent ravens to all 7 kingdoms demanding their submission. Aegon landed strategically at the mouth of the Blackwater Rush, in the disputed lands between the Kingdom of the Isles and the Rivers and the Kingdom of the Stormlands, so that Argilac and Harren could not decide on who should take action against him. He raised a primitive castle, where 3 centuries later would be the city of King's Landing. He unfurled his own banner in the manner of the houses of the 7 kingdoms, with a red 3-headed dragon breathing fire upon a black field, and declared himself king of the whole continent. 2 BC, 1 AC, despite pleas to intervene in the Free Cities, Aegon the Conqueror, the ruler of House Targaryen, decides to invade Westeros, along with his sister wives Rhaenys and Visenya. With only a small number of soldiers, his forces make landfall at the mouth of the Blackwater Rush. On a tall hill overlooking the bay, he builds a wooden redoubt on the site of what is now the Red Keep. He then begins his military campaign using the only 3 dragons known to have survived the Doom of Valyria, Balerion, ridden by Aegon, Meraxes, ridden by Rhaenys, and Vhagar, ridden by Visenya. As Aegon marches west, the Rivermen led by Edmund Tully of Riverrun rise up in rebellion against their Ironborn oppressors and march to join his army against them. King Harren the Black is besieged in Harrenhal, but when he refuses to surrender, Aegon simply flies Balerion over the walls and proceeded to burn the entire castle. Harren and all his sons roasted alive in their own tower, making House Hoare extinct. The remaining Ironborn flee back to the Iron Islands. Aegon rewards House Tully by making them overlords of the Riverlands. Aegon's bastard half-brother, Orys Baratheon, marches south to invade the Stormlands, along with Rhaenys riding Meraxes. During the Battle of the Last Storm, Orys faces the last Storm King, Argilac the Arrogant, and kills him in single combat. After his victory, Orys seizes Argilac's castle of Storm's End, along with his daughter whom he takes to wife. Aegon rewards Orys by naming him overlord of the Stormlands and allowing him to found House Baratheon. The Targaryen army then recombines and marches south to face the allied forces of King Mern IX Gardener of the Reach and King Loren I Lannister of the Rock in the climactic Battle of the Conquest, which becomes known as the Field of Fire. All 3 dragons are unleashed in the same battle for the first and only time, and more than 4,000 men are burned alive by the dragons. House Gardener is extinguished, so Aegon names the stewards of Highgarden as overlords of the Reach, House Tyrell, a cadet branch of House Gardener. King Loren surrenders to Aegon, who names him overlord of the Westerlands and allows House Lannister to continue its rule. Aegon advances to Oldtown, location of the headquarters of the Faith of the Seven. Ultimately the High Septon decides to welcome Aegon into the city, and formally blesses his reign. Aegon chooses to date the years of his reign starting from this day that the High Septon acknowledged him, forming the basis of the new calendar system used throughout Westeros for the next 3 centuries. After finally gathering up his widely scattered bannermen, King Torrhen Stark of the North arrives in the south, but seeing the power of the dragons after the Field of Fire, and the Targaryens' now massive army of conscripts, he realizes that all hope of victory is lost. Torrhen chooses to surrender without battle, and in return, Aegon allows the Starks to continue to rule the north under the Targaryens. After the Field of Fire, House Arryn thought they could hide behind the Vales Mountains, but Visenya simply flew Vhagar over the mountain straight to the Eyrie, and accepted their bloodless surrender. Aegon's attempt to conquer Dorne is thwarted by the Dornish refusal to give battle openly, preferring guerrilla warfare. Aegon decides to allow Dorne and House Martell to remain independent for now, to focus on reigning in his other recent conquests. Aegon returns to the site of his army's first landing at the mouth of the Blackwater River and begins construction of a grand new capital city for his unified realm, King's Landing. He carves out territory from surrounding kingdoms to form the Crownlands, ruled directly by the Targaryens to support the city. Aegon has the swords of his defeated enemies gathered up and uses the fires of his dragon Balerion to forge them into the Iron Throne, seat of the rulers of the new unified realm. The naming of the After Aegon's Landing dating system is inherently a misnomer, as Aegon I himself counted the years of his reign as starting from the end of his conquest, when he entered Oldtown and was blessed by the High Septon, which occurred 2 years after Aegon and his army first landed on the mainland at the mouth of the Blackwater Rush. Apparently, the inherent discrepancy in the name of the After Landing dating system became something of an annoyance in-universe for the maesters of the Citadel. In later books, such as the prequel novella The Princess and the Queen, George R.R. Martin presents several maesters who have switched to the name After Conquest, abbreviated AC. This is not a new dating system, simply updating the name of the existing system to more accurately reflect historical events. The date, 130 AC, is the exact same year as 130 AL. That being said, the few written documents seen on screen during the first seasons of the TV series have used the AL notation. In some ways, this reflects modern attempts to update the Anno Domini system of the Gregorian calendar. The AD/BC dating system was only developed by the medieval monk Dionysius Exiguus some 500 years after Jesus was crucified, retroactively piecing together previous dates based on the individual reign of rulers or who was consul in Rome at the time, which ultimately produced several errors. Modern scholarship generally agrees that Jesus was probably born closer to the year 6 BC rather than at 1 BC, there was no year 0. Rather than go through the administrative chaos of revising all dated records, attempts have been made to introduce an alternative name for the system. Common Era, CE, replaces Anno Domini, AD, and, before the Common Era, BCE, replaces, before Christ, BC. The alternative names, apart from being religiously neutral, are more accurate, as the AD system did not itself provide an accurate count from the date of Jesus's actual birth. As with the Anno Domini system, the After Landing, or After Conquest, dating system does not have a year 0. It uses as its starting point the crowning of Aegon by the High Septon in Oldtown. The instant that the High Septon set the crown upon his head, the year 1 BC changed into 1 AC, the entire first year after conquest was 1 AC, and the day after the coronation was thus 1 day into 1 AC even though a full year had not elapsed. Aegon I has 2 children, his elder son Aenys with his sister wife Rhaenys, and his younger son Maegor with his sister wife Visenya. While Aegon I dates the years of his reign from when he was crowned by the High Septon in Oldtown, some of the conquest is still unfinished. House Hoare and its armies were destroyed at the burning of Harrenhal, but the Iron Islands themselves remained depowered by unconquered while Aegon focused on his remaining enemies on the mainland. Aegon eventually consolidated his position enough to invade them with his fleets and dragons. The priest King Lodos called upon the drowned god to send krakens to destroy the Targaryen fleet, but when they failed to appear, he and hundreds of his followers walked into the ocean rather than surrender. Their armies already destroyed, the Iron Islands quickly fall. Recognizing the long Ironborn tradition of choosing their own leaders, in a kingsmoot, he allows their lords to pick one of their own leading families to rule the Isles under Targaryen domination, House Greyjoy of Pike, led by Vicon Greyjoy. The First Dornish War. The Targaryens had bypassed Dorne during the initial conquest due to its isolation and harsh desert climate, but were now determined to complete their unification of the entire continent south of the Wall. The Dornishmen, however, learned from the Field of Fire in Harrenhal that there was no resisting the Targaryen dragons in open battle or by hiding in their castles. Therefore, the Dornish resorted to guerrilla warfare, fleeing when the dragons approached and then launching ambushes as soon as they flew away. The parched deserts were conducive to an insurgency harassing the supply lines of large occupation armies. The Targaryen armies were badly bled, and even one of the dragons died. Meraxes was killed and a lucky shot from a scorpion bolt struck her through the eye in mid-flight, killing her rider Queen Rhaenys in her fall. Enraged, Aegon and Visenya used their dragons to burn out every settlement in Dorne, but still, the Martells would not surrender. Eventually, both sides tired of the unending bloodshed, and the Targaryens agreed to withdraw from Dorne. Aegon I lives out the rest of his reign in peace, knitting the 7 kingdoms together into one realm. Construction continues on King's Landing. Work also begins on the great new royal castle known as the Red Keep, but Aegon I only lives to see its foundation set. War in the Riverlands. Aegon's forces made war upon Harren the Black. Aided by a popular uprising against the Ironborn led by House Tully, Aegon eventually bottled Harren up in his massive castle of Harrenhal. Harren refused to surrender, considering his castle impenetrable. Aegon had his dragon, Balerion, burn the castle with such ferocity that the towers melted like candles, roasting Harren and the other remaining members of House Hoare alive. Afterwards, Aegon raised the Tullus to become the lords paramount of the Trident and commanded the Ironborn to elect a new ruling house. They chose House Greyjoy of Pike, who swore fealty to Aegon and became the rulers of the Iron Islands. War in the Stormlands. At the same time, Aegon's bastard half-brother, Orys Baratheon, led an army against Argilac the Arrogant. Argilac chose to give battle in the field and was defeated and killed, eliminating House Durrandon. Orys took his castle of Storm's End, his sigil and words, and Argilac's daughter Argella to wife. Aegon rewarded him by naming him Lord of Storm's End and allowing him to found House Baratheon. War in the West. The forces of House Lannister and House Gardner combined and marched to meet Aegon's army in battle. At a field in the Reach that became known as the Field of Fire, Aegon unleashed all 3 dragons and decimated the enemy host within minutes. House Gardner was destroyed. Their stewards, the Tyrells, surrendered the Reach to Aegon and were named Lords Paramount of the Reach. The Lannisters also bent the knee and became Wardens of the West. Standoff with the North and the Vale. House Stark mobilized for war, but upon a demonstration of Aegon's superior forces, King Torrhen Stark bent the knee to save his army from certain destruction. For his submission, Aegon named him Warden of the North. The Starks thus emerged from the war without actually fighting. Upon the defeat of the Lannisters and the Gardners, House Arryn mobilized their army in anticipation of an invasion of the Vale of Arryn. However, upon seeing a dragon, Boy King Ronald Arryn surrendered peacefully in exchange for a ride. The Arryns were the last great house to surrender in the War of Conquest. The High Septon declared that the faith of the Seven would also support Aegon, ending much of the last resistance to the invaders. Invasion of Dorne. Aegon's forces made an abortive attempt to conquer Dorne, but the Dornish chose to melt away into the mountains and deserts and pursue guerrilla tactics rather than give open battle, where they would be vulnerable to dragonfire. Aegon eventually decided to allow Dorne to retain its independence, ending the War of Conquest.
If you like this content, don't forget to like and subscribe. See you later, bye bye.